National Commission on Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. Whyte's readings focused on gentrification and the city center. Gentrification, as Freeman states, is the process by which central urban neighborhoods have undergone disinvestments and economic decline. This process includes a reversal, reinvestment, and the in-migration of a relatively well-off middle and upper middle class population. Whyte criticizes center cities for not being more attractive. He claims that a return of young people to the center city could restore and stimulate old neighborhoods. In the Agora reading, Whyte discusses that city centers lack focus and coherence. This decentralization and removal of enterprises and corporations causes the loss of profit and introduces deterioration to these neighborhoods. He argues that gentrification is a mechanism to fix these issues. The rehabilitation of old homes and the building of aesthetically pleasing homes reinvent formerly deprived communities. And we have an example of the traditional brownstone homes in Brooklyn Heights, which is what Whyte talks about a lot, about the aesthetics and gentrification.
Many argue that gentrification is elitist and exploits low-income families. The largely assumed understanding of gentrification is that it threatens low-income housing. Whyte argues that the deterioration of neighborhoods is the chief threat to housing for the poor and not the improvement of neighborhoods. For example, in the 80s in New York City, more public housing was lost to deterioration than housing that was created as a result of gentrification. Public housing programs may seem convenient since rent cannot be more than 30% of the family's income, but due to low funding, they often remain in poor conditions. Improvement isn't the problem, deterioration is. Deterioration has the ability to displace just as equally as gentrification.
Freeman notes that many residents in gentrified areas welcome the investment and improvements, but they also fear displacement because as more middle homes come with their brownstones and condos, the low-income residents are forced to leave the damaged buildings that once were their homes. Residents complain that they feel like outsiders in areas that they've lived in for most of their lives. Whyte blames landlords who let buildings go to rot. Rehabilitation is the key to opening the door closed by not maintaining homes, abandoning them, and having them burned down and demolished.
Many feel that gentrification displaces the poor minorities by raising property taxes so that rent increases. Whyte rebukes these claims of displacement by pointing out that low-income renters move constantly, and only 4% of these moves are linked to displacement. Freeman disagrees, stating that while gentrification may not directly displace, poor populations and minorities tend not to move the gentrifying communities. Also, accessibility for the poor is limited at times in gentrified areas due to increasing housing prices. Inclusionary housing zoning and affordable housing is not always suffice. Another issue with displacement is that it separates established neighborhoods and ethnic communities.
Issues of displacement are generally blamed on gentrifiers. The typical gentrifier is characterized by his or her middle-class status. Whyte outlines the three different models of this person. First, we have people already living in the city who are looking for a new chic place to live. Second are people who normally would live in the suburbs but have chosen to live in the city for their own reasoning. Third are people who live in the suburbs and have decided to leave. A large number are known as empty nesters, or those whose children who have grown up and left the nest.
Due to the fact that oftentimes minorities live in low-income houses in the inner cities, many may assume that all gentrifiers are white, but gentrification can bring diversification. Cosby Huxtable lives in Brooklyn's beloved brownstones with his middle-class family in the classic sitcom The Cosby Show. Freeman demonstrates that the black population rose in gentrified areas from 1980 to 2000. He also mentions the increase in socioeconomic diversity in gentrified communities. Gentrification forces people from different races and social groups to cohabitate and share neighborhoods, but not necessarily the same building. It is interesting to wonder whether this diversity brings animosity or peace between the different groups.
Whyte also speaks of the homesteading that takes place in Baltimore and in Pittsburgh as an example of positives created through rehabilitation. Homesteading stems from the Homesteading Act of 1862, in which the government gave several acres of undeveloped land to applicants for free. Today, homesteading has evolved in the inner city to help change the housing options in communities. Residents and real estate seekers can purchase tax foreclosed properties for the low price of $100 to $300 with conditions that they will fix and rehabilitate the property.
Sadly, without any help from the government to rehabilitate the houses, several are left empty and unfinished. Whyte finds fault with the government for subsidizing suburbia with FHA house guaranteed mortgages, but not offering to help to rehabilitate houses in the city, not offering to rehabilitate city houses. Getting mortgages from banks to help with the rehabilitation was also an issue when the banks asked for 30% of the purchase price of the house in cash. Without any money many of these homes were made in the same poor condition that they were found in.
As with any social endeavor, gentrification has its flaws, but Whyte makes a point of trying to show the strengths of gentrification. When new condos and brownstones, accompanied by middle-class families, come into low-income neighborhoods, mechanisms are applied to benefit disadvantaged residents. With new houses usually comes new stores and businesses, providing more resources and employment to residents within the neighborhood. Gentrification lessens the chance of corporations relocating to the suburbs, because as Whyte puts it, it's either the suburbs or the inner city. Gentrification allows the circulation of more money in the inner city communities. As housing units increase, the perception of the community increases, making it more marketable to those who are considering living in the city.
Although Whyte points out several areas where gentrification can help those in the inner cities, his argument has several weaknesses. He never fully addresses what happens if the low-income houses are not rehabilitated and continues to crumble. Aside from homesteading, which has its flaws, how can these homes be made better to suit the new gentrified neighborhood while keeping the rent low?
While gentrification has so many side effects for low-income residents, Whyte shows us how we can see the positive situations that shape low-income neighborhoods. Both middle-class families and low-income residents are able to benefit from gentrification.
And then these are some discussion questions that we have for you guys. In chapter 24, Whyte noted that to paint over the brown, as remodelers did earlier, was sacrilege. What about brownstones makes them so aesthetically pleasing? Sorry. What about brownstones makes them so aesthetically pleasing? Does this beauty deter low-income residents from living in the neighborhoods or force them to leave, as so many assume is a result of gentrification? What importance does Whyte find in center cities? How does gentrification support or deter the development of the center cities? Whyte argues that gentrification creates more investment and fights the deterioration of neighborhoods. Does your knowledge of gentrification hold true to this argument, or does gentrification